Come on, Doug. Give Doug a big hand.
I accept your invitation to talk.
There you go.
Okay. The saga continues between us and the city staff. And the first page I titled Character of the City. Anyway, as we've been told a couple times tonight, February 24th at City Council meeting, the character of the city is going to be displayed. And you can read the ordinance that controls the process of rent increases right now has a means for which inflated space rent increases are allowed. And this I've entitled equals bad economics. Okay, bad economics is because spendable cash is reduced, the cash is exported out of the city that would have been spent in the city, the equities that homeowners have in their homes is now lowered because the space rents are increased, retirement incomes from the Social Security are not advancing at comparable rates as the rent ends, pay raises in people's homes are not being increased at the same rent. You want to slide it up, Mr. Allen? Roll it up. Yeah. Okay. A 3% floor, which is the means that the lowest that rent can be increased, that is provided for the landowners. And when the CPI or Consumer Price Index is less than 3%, this is an inflated space rent. Over the last 22 years, there has been 16 times that this Consumer Price Index has been lower than 3%. And that's resulted in a total of 22.4% inflated rent increases. Okay, next page. And here's an example. If your Social Security income each month is $1,000, and then you get a 1% CPI raise, so the next year you get $1,010. Well, if your rent each month is $500, and then you get a 3% rent increase, the rent increase goes to $515. So you will see that the first year you get $1,000, you spend $500, and you have $500 available cash. The next year you spent $515 on rent with only a $1,010 increase, so your spendable cash has gone down to $495. Imagine that for the last 25 years, and you get the 22% or $100 difference. And this is the chart from the CPI in July is what the city uses for the next year's rent. So in 94, it was 2.1, so you got a 0.9% inflated rent. 95, 96, 97, 98, 2000, 2004, and right there in 2010, CPI was actually negative 2.6 that year. That was the beginning of the recession. So if you add 3% rent increase on a negative 2.6 CPI, you can look across and it's 5.6% inflated rent that we had to pay when they increased our rent 3%. And you can go to the chart on after this one. The CPI chart it's on the same file. It's the right. This is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is where the CPI is based, and this is what I just want to show you is the actual July is the year, is the month that the city uses to coordinate the next year's rent, and you can see that. Okay, go back to the file again. Here's a little history of the ordinance. In 1991, the ordinance was developed with a 3% floor, meaning that no matter what the CPI was, the city allowed the landowners to increase the rent 3%, guaranteed them. In 2009, the residents petitioned the city for a change of that 3% floor to 0. We gave them a petition. We argued with them. In September of 2013, the city finally developed a draft of the ordinance with a 0% floor plus other changes. The other changes were the convenience of eliminating rules that made it more convenient for the city, and they also eliminated other rules that made it easier for the landowners to increase our rents. So we were happy with that. And then in November of 2014, city staff had a private meeting with the mobile home park owners and their representatives, and they decided under some kind of influence to change the floor back to 3%. So for a year and a half, we were excited about this change. And then in November, 4 months ago, the city staff met with the park owners, particularly Ken Striplin, Aaron Lay, and another staff member. And they decided to go back to the 3% floor. And they did not invite any residents to this meeting. So this meeting was a private meeting. Now, next week, September 24th, we have the first reading of the draft. And this is going to be a 2-time reading, so they have to read at 2 meetings in a row. Anybody that wants to come down, we're asking you to fill out a written card. We have statements you can read and help us write and put on there. Or we're also asking you to fill out a speaker slip. If you don't want to speak, just when they call your name, then allow me to speak those 3 minutes, because I have 60 minutes of presentation and argument that I want to present to the city. And if anybody comes down, fills out a blue speaker slip, then allot me your time, and then I'll speak for those 3 minutes too. Next page. This is my contact information. If anybody wants to contact me, you can go from there. And there's some handouts I have that the city put out about the meeting on the 24th and the 10th. So I'll pass these out. Anybody wants them. All right. Any questions? We got some questions there.
So if the city passes the ordinance for a 3% floor, does that mean the landowners will definitely charge a 3% increase every year? Or does it give them the option to do that or not?
It gives them the option. They're not required to give us a 3% rent increase. Many parks have, when the CPI was at negative 2.6, there were several parks that did no rent increase that year. My park still did a 3%. Park Lane has always done a 3%. There's several other parks that have done 3%. There's also rules in the ordinance that allow pass-throughs for tree trimming and driveway repair and pool repair. And they can add that in addition to the 3% on top of the rents too. So depending on the park and who's the investment, if it's a family-owned little local park, usually they are very lenient on these low CPI years. But if it's a investment group from Irvine or Hollywood or somewhere, they always try to get as much as they can every year.
Thank you. So will the landowners be making a presentation at the February 24th meeting when the ordinance is introduced?
Yeah, they have been informed by the city that this meeting is taking place and the reading is taking place. So I'm pretty sure each park owner will have his manager or representative there. They have a homeowners association that's California-wide, and they send representatives there to speak on behalf of the owners too. They've already made several presentations in front of the city, And this is the same group that met with Ken Striplin on November 14th privately and had a meeting with him without having us being able to respond to what they told him in the meeting. So yes, there's going to be many people from the parks on the ownership side that will be there.
So shouldn't the tenants be able to make a presentation or have?
We're not allowed to make a presentation. All we're allowed is the 3 minutes. And park owners are only going to be allowed the 3-minute Brown Act rules. There's going to be no presentation.
Oh,
the
no
city is going to present their staff report like they do on all the other agenda items. They're going to 10, 15-minute presentation. And the presentation that I've watched at several public meetings has been full of misleading statements that the city staff has guided the council to believe that this is a good thing for the city, but inflation is not a good thing for the city. Inflation is not a good thing for the citizens. It's not a good thing for economics. Inflation is just not good, and that's a problem.
I just want to say on this rent, manufactured home rent ordinance, my biggest heartburn with it when I first heard about it and I first saw it is that it had something in it that said there was no right of council appeal. So in my way of thinking, the city council makes the rules. They should be the one to adjudicate the rules. And in every other aspect of city life, you go ahead and like people have done in the past, you go ahead and you decide you're going to build a project. And you go all the way through the process of permitting and negotiating with the city, and you get all done. And then someone on the council says, I don't like it, so they pull it to the council, and the council has the ability to change the decision. Not in this case. They specifically turned around in the other ordinance, and I talked about it at every meeting that I went to, that saying, not giving you the ability or specifically indicating there is no right of council appeal says that the only remedy that a park resident has is to litigate. So you're asking the people that have the least amount of money to use the most expensive method of getting to the city council. Now, in the last draft of the ordinance that I saw, they took that statement out. They took the statement out that says there is no right of council appeal. But they still left statements in there that said, so-and-so makes the final decision. And I want to go speak and make sure that doesn't mean that there is no right of council appeal. Because, like I said, the council is the ones that makes the decisions. They should be the one that should be able to stand up for the decision. They should be able to adjudicate the decision. They shouldn't require the mobile home residents to litigate and try to hire an attorney. But we'll see what happens when we get to the council meeting.